All right, welcome everyone to today's live with Neha Mirchandani. So Neha, you are CMO in charge of people at BrightPlan. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be here. And hi, everyone.
Awesome. Super thanks for joining me. I would love to hear a little bit more about your role at BrightPlan and actually what BrightPlan does.
Sure, I'd love to share more. So as Dave mentioned, I'm the CMO at BrightPlan. We're a fintech company that is democratizing access to financial wellness for everyone. And I'm responsible in my role for all our outbound marketing strategies and programs across both brand awareness and demand generation, and also our people function. A little bit more about BrightPlan. We deliver the next must-have benefit that helps employers support their employees' well-being while increasing engagement and also boosting a company's bottom line. And Dave, as you know, employee well-being is incredibly top of mind for people, especially today during the pandemic. And wellness, the way it's been defined previously, has been physical, mental, and financial wellness. And we're also in our digital world starting to see digital wellness play a role in that mix. And we've been really fortunate to partner with our customers and help them support their employees in these stressful times.
Awesome. And that's so interesting because I think, when we think about, things like employee experience, it's a whole experience, right? And there's so many different aspects. So I love the aspect that you bring about in terms of wellness, financial wellness, and the well-being and so forth. And I'm wondering too, since the pandemic and the onset of this pandemic, have you guys seen an increase in your customer base and just overall demand for financial wellness solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dave, the point that you made around employee experience and engagement being incredibly top of mind, absolutely. And, the demand for financial wellness has definitely gone up. Before, it was viewed as a little bit more of an emerging benefit, and people were more focused on things like physical well-being and mental well-being. But with the pandemic, the lens has really shifted to be really financial wellness, yes, mental wellness, childcare, those kinds of well-being benefits that are becoming increasingly important.
No, absolutely. And again, employee experience has just emerged as this key focus, right, in the past several years, and now with the pandemic, there's even a more heightened, awareness and focus on, just people's well-being, how are people actually doing, right? And so how has it been, I guess, for and internally, navigating the pandemic, managing people and just make sure they're okay, and also juxtapose that, with what you're hearing, from your own customers.
For sure. So let me tackle the internal Bright piece first. So as you're aware, Dave, we're a startup and we have a really small, close-knit team. And from the very beginning, it was incredibly important to our founder and CEO that we were focused on our employees' well-being and having a culture of empowerment, transparency, collaboration, which frankly has stood us in really good stead. So I'll give you some examples. So we have a weekly all-hands meeting where everybody at the company attends, and we openly talk about, how we're doing in the business. All the good, the bad, and the ugly. And employees are encouraged to speak up, engage, and openly ask questions. Our culture is about teamwork. And so we celebrate successes as a team. And, we learn and course correct quickly from our failures as well. That's part of the beauty of being a startup. You can take more risk. And then, I don't know if you were aware, but BrightPlan from the start was founded based on a model of flexible work. So we used to be in the office 2 days a week and 3 days remote. So when the pandemic hit, it was a relatively seamless transition for us because we were already working more than half the week from home. And, a lot of what companies have been struggling with through this shift has been, do we have the right processes? Do we have the right systems and policies in place to really, support a remote workforce? For us, we already had those things in place. So it was It was relatively seamless. The other thing I would say is that, we heard from our employees, since everybody was working from home, they were like, we would love to be able to have the opportunity to move out of our home base, which was in Silicon Valley, and move to other states where they could have a better quality of life. And, as we started talking to our employees, we realized, Dave, that they were really not comfortable coming back to the office in the near term, at least, till the vaccine has been rolled out more broadly. So people like you and I can get it, right, as well. Yeah. And then the other piece that I think that we did that I'm incredibly proud of is we took the leap. So, in September of last year, we took the leap, and we as a leadership team decided that we're going to implement a work from anywhere model. So now what that means is, our employees can be anywhere in the US, and they can they can move to a lower cost of living, state if that's what they choose. And the kicker is we are not impacting their compensation. So a lot of companies, what they're doing is like, yes, you can be in different states, but then we're going to adjust your compensation, right, to the standard of living for that state. And we are not doing that. So, our employees have been really enthusiastically embracing sort of this work from anywhere. And it's given them an opportunity to be able to in their near-term future, especially with all the uncertainty, right, that we have happening today. And it's funny, you're going to laugh, but we had 2 employees that actually got married, and they moved to Idaho. And yes, they got married to each other. One moved to Texas, and another one moved to Colorado.
Wow.
And, it's also enabled us to think a little bit broader, Dave, in terms of recruiting. Because before we were like really hung up, like we've got to find top talent in Silicon Valley. And now it's like, the world, well, not the world for us, but the US is our oyster. And we can really look for the right person, irrespective of location. So I would say for us internally, it has been great. And, most of our employees are quite happy with that. I have to say from a people perspective, I was somewhat concerned about what is this going to mean for us from a productivity and employee engagement perspective? And I know a lot of companies are trying to keep a close tab on that. But I have to say, like, I was really pleased. We were really pleased to see how productivity was incredibly high. Employee engagement remained incredibly high. And I think part of that is because our people are self-motivated and they're committed to our mission and our success. So, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you, Dave, but I started at BrightPlan in April of last year.
Oh, right in the right in the midst of it.
So honestly, I have not met a lot of people at the company in the flesh. I've even hired people that I have not met in the flesh yet. So it's sort of an interesting world that we live in.
That is, it's funny, and I love those that you share, because you really begin to think and just see that this is really about people, right? We talk about the whole person, and it's really about people's mental well-being, their state of mind. You can't get an employee to be productive or engaged if they're not into it, or they're not totally there, so you have to have fully present employees. And what you guys are describing, or what you're describing that you guys do, is really looking at the whole person, making sure that they're present and they're engaged, right? So that's awesome.
That's right.
So funny, I've always sort of talked about the inextricable link between and I use the abbreviations, the acronyms EX and CX. I'm originally from Gartner, so I'm responsible for a few acronyms myself. So a lot of alphabet soup, but employee experience and customer experience. And I always thought that your title, being sort of CMO, which we traditionally think of, external facing, and also in charge of people, which we think of as internal, but that they're so closely aligned. And that and the heart of it is the human experience, right? And so you're really it's really about people, whether you're looking internally or externally. And that intersection is pretty cool. And so, given, Bright Plans, your target audience, for financial wellness and so forth, were there any sort of customer insights, during that sort of the pandemic of your customer relationships that you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. And Dave, I know you and I go a ways back, and you know well that, I'm a huge believer also in this tight connection between EX and CX. I'll use your acronym soup here. And, I've seen it play out in different industries. And, in a nutshell, as they say, happy and healthy employees create happy customers, right?
Indeed.
So that's the essence of it. To get more specific, to answer your question in terms of what we have seen from our customers, especially during the pandemic. By the way, our customers are CHROs and HR leaders. And we've seen a real heightened focus on employee well-being and engagement, because most of our customers have transitioned to a remote or a hybrid work environment. And it's really hard to keep a pulse on your employees and their well-being. Because, think about our previous world, right? You could have a water cooler conversation. You could go up to somebody and just say, hey, how are you doing? And you can kind of keep a really strong pulse. That's no longer the reality of the world that we live in. So
Indeed.
Staying close, listening to your employees. We've seen our customers really double down on benefits that matter. And what I mean by that, Dave, is, this shift from in-office perks like ping pong tables and free lunches and commuter benefits that are kind of irrelevant in today's world to more of benefits that truly matter from a well-being perspective, such as mental, financial health, and childcare benefits. We're seeing our customers really starting to focus on this. And across the board, we're seeing a heightened interest in financial wellness. So I'll share some survey data with you. So we did a survey with our, not with our employees, but with our customers, as well as just in general, the market, engaged employees, as well as HR leaders on what is their level of financial stress. And this survey was done in the September-October timeframe of last year. And what we saw, Dave, was that almost 50% of employees said that they were stressed or concerned about their finances, which was a record high in 2020. And when we asked HR the same question, they stated that they believe that their employees are 70% of them said that they're stressed and concerned. So, it's a higher number, which in a way it signals that HR cares, truly worried about their employees' well-being. The other important data point I want to share is we also asked employees to rank their benefits. Like, what are the most important benefits for you? And we saw that, compensation listed number one, which is not surprising. Compensation always lists number one. But number two was financial wellness. And financial wellness was ahead of healthcare. It was ahead of paid time off, and it was ahead of mental health benefits. So, employees definitely are starting to see that connection between when I'm financially stressed, it has an impact on my physical health and my mental well-being.
Indeed.
The other thing that we're seeing is that, again, a positive trend, which is that employers are really worried about their employees' health and well-being. And so we're seeing a larger investment into these well-being benefits. And frankly, Dave, it's also a differentiation strategy, right, that works well, because if you have a really compelling benefits package that you're offering folks, it enables you to really attract top talent and engage and retain your current employees as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I love the value proposition here that you just shared. And so I'm wondering too, so as you're targeting sort of these HR leaders, are you seeing for the most part technology playing a very important part in sort of work culture and your customers' needs as well?
Absolutely. I feel like digital transformation has been a big deal. And I'm sure you agree with that, Dave, just,
Yeah.
in all the industries that you're covering. Within the enterprise digital transformation, I've seen it accelerate dramatically with our customers. Think about this new reality. You and I were just kidding around before we jumped on live, Dave, where,
Yeah.
you and I are having this conversation virtually
Yeah.
and have been able to do that without technology. Think
Absolutely.
right? And think about remote work. Like, I know we all complain about, Zoom fatigue or WebEx fatigue or whatever you want to call it, fatigue. It's real,
Yeah.
but we still wouldn't be able to be functional and productive in this remote work reality without technology. So, so I think that's the baseline aspect of it. And there's two other things I want to highlight as it relates to technology. The second, goes back, Dave, to what I was talking about, which is it's hard to have a pulse on your employees in this remote world. And a lot of our customers and employers are doing the best that they can, and they're doing pulse surveys and things like that. That's one way to do it. I'm not saying it's not a good way to do it. It is important. But I think there are some blind spots that that are going to show up, and the digital reality. And I think it's important to look at online behavior to capture the nuances, right, of how are your employees feeling? So, for example, are they participating in video calls? Do they have their video turned on, right?
Exactly.
Are they engaging in team messaging chats and fun, team building activities, for example? And then I would say, to bring it closer to home for me in financial wellness, technology has also had a huge impact. So, in the past, financial advice was really only accessible to a select few, typically high net worth individuals. And, and because partially it was delivered through human financial advisors, and the costs were prohibitive as well.
Absolutely.
As I shared earlier, our mission, right, at BrightPlan is to democratize financial wellness and really make it accessible for everybody. And honestly, we could not have done that without a technology platform. Just a side note, our solution is offered as a financial wellness benefit to all employees. So the other point I want to make is inclusion. It's about inclusion. It's not about, right, select few. It's about everyone. And the way that we do this is through a digital platform as well as human advisors. And, we're enabling employees with important things like financial literacy, which is a huge topic, right? We don't teach it in schools. And so our kids don't necessarily have the right way to think about money, right? So we do a lot of that. We help with financial planning, investing, day-to-day management. And we're also a certified fiduciary. So what it means is, an employer can rest assured that we're always going to act in the best interest of their employees. Yeah. The other point I want to just raise on the topic of inclusion, Dave, is we've seen a lot of our customers starting to think about the role of financial wellness in their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. So you and I both know there's lots of conversations around equal pay, diversity in leadership teams and boards. I think that's just the baseline, right? We need to do so much more. And true inclusion is really about helping underrepresented employees turn the wages and that pay into long-term wealth and transform generations versus just an individual employee. So this, I think, is really going to be key to sustainable as well as long-term equality and leveling the playing field for everyone.
No, absolutely. And you were like, singing from my hymn book, and I love it, because we're seeing that so much, especially from financial, just knowledge, wellness, and so forth. There's a big difference, culturally, for instance, for communities of color and so forth, where we're not taught a lot of the stuff, and so democratize the access to that education, and then including that as you're talking about diversity and inclusion, because once you really have a diverse workforce and a diverse company, you're looking at diversity of all the different cultural aspects, representation, and understanding where people are coming from culturally, and understand what they need. And so there is a huge part of that culture, that workforce, that will need, even more training on financial wellness and so forth. We all do, but there are different aspects or different understandings of where people are starting from, from that knowledge. So that's great.
Yeah, you're spot on, right? I mean, this is where it's about differences, right? Everything, and sometimes people have just been looking at the black and white versus there's a lot of gray and other color and other it's people's background and experiences, bring a lot in terms of how they engage with money. So you're spot on.
And that's inclusion. It's one thing, especially this past year, right, from 2020, pandemic, the height of it, a lot happened, socioeconomic issues began to rise. And, I think that added to this new focus, I think, on people and diversity and inclusion. I think a big part of it, again, is really like, what do people need? What does your worker, who's probably, engaged in one of the top initiatives in the company, you don't want to, for instance, break her, right? Understand that, she may have a couple of kids and, she has to take care of that and so forth. And so it's understanding your people, what they need holistically, as a whole, that whole person, and then have a whole of company approach towards that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I was reading some of the stats around even women, for example, right, Dave? I mean, like 2.2 million women left the workforce last year. I think it was in the September, October timeframe, due to the challenges, right, that they're facing with childcare and remote schooling their kids and all of that. So I just feel like this, again, coming back to what we've been talking about, it has really put people and well-being at the center of the conversation today.
Absolutely. And it's funny talking about the technology piece as well too. It's even during this, sort of a pandemic, I guess we're still in it, even this platform that we're sort of live streaming on, right? That's sort of become the thing. We're Zooming, we're live streaming. There was a little hiccup at the beginning here, but that's like, it's live TV, right? and those things happen, but it's even in that, that realize like, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. We're work from home. The dog's gonna bark. The kids might walk in. My son's walked into a live stream before, and it's like, you know what? It happens. It's just like, and for people to realize that it's okay. These things happen. It's just life, right? Just it is. It happens. Just keep on moving. Keep on moving.
Take a deep breath. Don't
exactly.
It's happening to all of us, right?
Exactly, and that's democratization, right? So Neha, from a future of work perspective, and I always say that I sometimes hate using that term because we're living the future now. Like, if future is here, right? What do you think, if you had to take out your sort of crystal ball, what do you think work looks like the rest of this year and going forward?
Yeah, I love questions where I get to predict. So without consequences, I have to say. So, I'm a glass half full kind of person. So just keep that in mind when I share what I'm going to share. The pandemic has created a lot of stress and a lot of challenges for us as a society. But going back to getting real that you and I were just talking about before, I think it's also sort of opened our eyes to the fact that we can do this. We're resilient, right?
Absolutely.
And from a work culture standpoint, it has shown to a lot of the naysayers that said that you have to be in the office 9 to 5, right? That productive remote work is possible. And it has a lot of benefits from an employee engagement perspective. So I would say there's no going back. And I was reading this PwC study recently where they shared that 3/4 of office workers moved to remote work during the pandemic. And actually 74% said that they would like to continue working from home at least 2 days a week post-pandemic. So that is the new future. And it's going to require businesses to fundamentally rethink how they engage their employees in this sort of a long-term remote hybrid work environment. And again, as we said, with keeping employee wellness in the center. So flexibility at work, I think is going to be the norm. It's going to be a necessity, especially for companies to hire and retain top talent. With all my glass full predictions, I'm going to do a glass half empty couple of predictions here, Dave, which is, with all the positive that I think is going to come out of this for us, there are going to be some interesting new challenges. Like, let's say, I said it opens up the world, right? From a recruiting perspective.
Yeah.
That's going to create a bit of a challenge. Whoa, I can hire people anywhere, but how do I focus so I don't lose that focus, right? That's one.
Yeah.
The other piece is, like, as we bring in people from different regions and cultures, it's going to be an interesting challenge for us to think about the dynamics of teams and how we think about that. And then finally, I would say, from just us as employees perspective, I think we're going to need to really crack the code on this work-life blend thing.
Yeah.
Right? We talked about the dog coming in, or kids coming in, or whatever that might be. And I think it's going to be important, not only for productivity and success, but frankly, for our own sanity, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And to tell you this, this past year, now into 2021, has just shown us that, first, to your point, yes, we can work remotely. I remember, I started my career at Gartner, and we were working from home. My kids now, all they've known is dad works from home. That's all they've known. Right. And so we used to call ourselves pajama workers, right? Because we just get up and just go in our PJs for our first call, back when calls were all audio.
Yeah, no video. You don't want to be, and then it was half PJ, right?
Hey, exactly. Yeah, then went to like a nice business casual up top and PJs on the bottom. Exactly. But it's like we're seeing how our whole lives have just changed, right? And again, this real focus on we can work remotely. But I remember there used to be a stigma, right, where some people who work remote, like, they're just slacking off, and it's like, and that's such a lot of people, like, their esteem, their engagement was even more so, and we're seeing studies to prove it, when they work remotely, given the flexibility to work remotely, than they were just going to office and sort of being, almost robotic every day. That flexibility was definitely helpful.
Yeah, and I think accommodating, like, there is not this silo between work and a different silo between life. I think that's the way we were wired, to switch on, switch off, right? As we navigate between these two worlds that we live in. And I think the reality is, life needs to accommodate work, and work needs to accommodate life.
Indeed.
And we just need to, and that's where I think it's opened a lot of eyes for people as well as employers, right? Like, your whole self, you bring your whole self to work.
Your whole self.
Yeah.
That's good. So life needs to accommodate work. Work needs to accommodate life, and bring your whole self to work. Ladies and gentlemen, Neha, your guru. I love it. Awesome. Neha, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a great conversation. I know we can kind of go on forever, but thanks again for joining me today. This has been awesome.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having me.
And thanks everyone for tuning in as well too. See you next time on Inflow TV. Bye everyone.